If you are currently using a GLP-1 drug, considering one, or wondering whether it might be a part of your journey, I think you're going to get a lot out of today's conversation. I'm speaking with Lynn, who released 70 pounds using a GLP-1 along with the Shift Weight Mastery process. And what I love about her story is that it just isn't a story about weight release. It's a story about taking ownership. For Lynn, the medication was a tool, but it wasn't the whole journey. The real transformation came from getting her mindset aligned, learning how to work with her mind, and building the kind of inner leadership that helped her not only release weight, but begin maintaining her ideal weight even after coming off the drug. And I think that is such an important conversation right now, because whether you use a GLP-1 or not, the deeper question is always, how do you create a way of living and thinking that allows you to live at your ideal weight long term? So come on in and listen to this honest, thoughtful, and very hopeful conversation with Lynn. Did you know that our struggle with weight doesn't start with the food on your plate or get fixed in the gym? 80% of our weight struggle is mental. That's right. The key to unlocking long-term weight release and management begins in your mind. Hi there, I'm Rita Black. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, weight loss expert, best-selling author, and the creator of the Shift Weight Mastery process. And not only have I helped thousands of people over the past 20 years achieve long-term weight mastery, I am also a former weight struggler, carb addict, and binge eater. And after 2 decades of failed diets and fad weight loss programs, I lost 40 pounds with the help of hypnosis. Not only did I release all that weight, I have kept it off for 25 years. Enter the Thin Thinking podcast, where you too will learn how to remove the mental roadblocks that keep you struggling. I'll give you the thin thinking tools, skills, and insights to help you develop the mindset you need, not only to achieve your ideal weight, but to stay there long term and live your best life. Sound good? Let's get started. Hello, and welcome. Come on in. Get comfy, and let's talk about something that is very much in the air these days, GLP-1s. Now, if you've been anywhere near the internet or a doctor's office or a dinner table with women over 40, you know this conversation is everywhere, and with good reason. A lot of people are using GLP-1s, thinking about using them, or quietly wondering, should I be using one too? So today I wanted to bring you a really honest and refreshing conversation with Lynn, who released 70 pounds with the help of a GLP-1 while also doing the Shift Weight Mastery process. And what I love about Lynn's story is this is not a the drug did it all, hallelujah, the end kind of conversation. Not at all. What she shares so beautifully is that the GLP-1 was a tool, a helpful tool, but the deeper shift came from getting her mind aligned with her weight release, learning how to work with herself differently, and really stepping into the driver's seat of her own journey. Because as you know, around here, we're always interested in the deeper thing, not just what are you doing, but who are you becoming as you do it. And that is where the magic is. That is where the ownership is. And ultimately, that is where long-term freedom lives. What is especially inspiring, though, about Lynn's story is that she has now been off the drug for a couple of months and is continuing to maintain her ideal weight. That's right. So now she is very honest, and she is still on a journey because, of course, it is. We're not riding off into the sunset on a unicorn made of kale, but she really shows what is possible when a tool like a GLP-1 is used as part of a bigger process of learning, rewiring, and weight mastery. So whether you're currently using a GLP-1, considering one, or deciding, not for me, or just wanting a more grounded conversation about how these medications can fit into your bigger picture, I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. And just FYI, since we're talking about mindset, If you have not joined me for my free online masterclass uh, called How to Stop the Start Over Tomorrow Weight Struggle Cycle and Begin Releasing Weight for Good with a Weight Release Hypnosis Session, please check it out. The link is in the show notes, or you can go to www.shiftweightmastery.com/free and get in. So enjoy my conversation with Lynn. Welcome, Lynn, to the Thin Thinking podcast. I'm so happy that you are here.
I am so happy to be here.
I've been waiting to have this conversation with you for a while. I think our listeners are going to find our conversation today, enlightening and helpful, just because we're going to be talking about your experience with weight release and using a GLP-1 drug. And I think it's on the minds of a lot of people. And if people have not been using one, people who might be considering using one, or people who have tried one and it didn't work for them or came off of it already, I think there's just a lot of questions out there. So thank you for being one of my first guests to discuss this very potent topic.
Or
You're very brave. So tell us a little bit about you and what was your relationship with your weight, before you started, and, what did you find the most frustrating or defeating, uh, with your struggle with weight?
um, I'm aware of first struggling with my weight when I was a teenager, and this was the era of hip huggers and I forget what they call those kind of tops where your belly showed. But that was definitely, my body was not built for that. And I remember feeling like I didn't fit in then. And my mother was overweight. She would talk about being overweight, but I noticed only sporadic efforts of trying to deal with it. So I went on a number of weight loss programs. I I don't think I ever did the liquid diet, but I did Weight Watchers program. I did fen. I used to go to a doctor's office every week and they injected me with something. I have no idea what it was. And I took pills and I apparently was kind of crabby and not too fun to be around. And I would lose weight and then I would gain it back. I tried programs where I purchased their food, which I did not like. Actually, that was late 80s. And I had the most success with that in terms of I wore a bikini, which I never thought I would. Gained weight again, uh, lost it, I guess, most recently with a program where I ate small portions of food that they would provide, and I had one meal a day that I would cook that had parameters. And that was probably about 1,000 calorie a day deal.
Wow.
And I got down 35 pounds higher than where I am now and considered that a success. Got married, had my wedding outfit, designed for me and all that, and felt like I was rocking it. And then we bought a house in Baltimore after I got married, and there was leftover Indian food from our wedding, including the beautiful Indian desserts. And I would be transporting this stuff to our new home, and I would have an open container of it in the passenger side. And I would be just hoovering this carrot coconut dessert. And before you know it, oh, and my husband and I developed a fascination with craft cocktails, which peanuts, by the way, go great with craft cocktails. So, before I knew it, my weight started creeping up and up and up, and I was not feeling that good. And I had been pre-diabetic, and found myself in the doctor's office where they said, okay, well, you're in the diabetic territory now.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, diabetic territory. So they gave me metformin, which was okay. It it was okay. And I had been hearing about GLP-1s, and honestly, I wasn't sure how they worked. But I thought if they can help you manage your blood sugar and then maybe there's this side benefit that I'd lose weight, I ought to give that a try. And really, with literally no research, I requested to be put on a GLP-1. And they started me on the lowest dose they start people on, which, I mean, I didn't feel any side effects. I'm not really sure that I lost weight. And I
What
asked for
what was the drug you were using? The GLP-1?
Mounjaro.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think they give it another name when you're taking it for weight loss, though I'm not quite sure why. But um, I asked for, they started me on 2.5 dosage, and then the next step up was 5, which it goes up to 15. So that's a reasonably low dose.
Right.
And I started taking that, and it was at a time in my life when I hadn't stepped on a scale voluntarily in 2 years, because I was engaged in a program aimed at making peace with your body and accepting yourself the way you are, and bringing that into the world and celebrating it, whatever it looks like. Um,
You were mentioning that, and I think, do you mind just telling our listeners a little more about like that? Because I found what was fascinating about that program when we were talking about it is how it dealt with the history of weight and how, uh, do you mind just talking about the men in the
Not at all.
19th century? Because I think that's fascinating.
We had a book. Oh gosh, I'll have to like look up what it's called. So we were reading a book very slowly, and we would get together and discuss that book. And the authors of it are from Portland, Oregon, like the most liberal bastion of Portland, Oregon that you could ever imagine. And they were pointing to the history of why did thin become the ideal for women? Where is all this pressure coming from? And the rule makers back in the day were men, and these were before the right to vote. And they decided that the smaller the woman, the more fashionable she is, but also the more easily controlled. You know,
Mm.
a small woman is more easily controlled. There were some racial stereotyping also involved. Oh, you want to avoid being that. Um, and and so that was something that I was unaware of. And it was, I'm sure that's true. And it's easier to fly the body peace flag, really, if you think that the effort to be thin comes from something like that that's oppressive rather
Yeah.
than a goal for your own health.
Yeah, I think I heard a conversation. It was a very interesting conversation with actually two doctors, and they did talk about the body positivity, and they were British doctors. It was a very interesting conversation where they were talking about how body positivity is awesome, and of course, we embrace that as well. But when it became um, oh, I forget how exactly they framed it, but they said obesity positive, and how that then disconnected from this idea of health and just self-nurturing and totally nourishing and showing up for your body and truly feeding your body in a way that is aligned with how your body wants to be fed or needs to be fed. Do you know what I mean? So it was like that those two pieces, and it seems to be aligning with what you're saying, is that
there's kind of a disconnect between the health aspect and truly
Well,
taking care of yourself.
they don't, certain members of, let's say, certain participants in that realm of body positivity do not believe that there are negative health ramifications that are directly attributable to weight. I remember being provided with a sheet of questions for my doctor, because usually if you're an overweight person and you go to your doctor and you're a woman and you complain about anything, the first thing they want to do is weigh you and talk about your weight. So they were rebuttals to the doctor based on
Mm.
facts of studies of, heart disease or whatever. I never printed it out or really got that in depth with it, but there are members of that community that do not believe that there's a direct correlation with
Got it.
overweight and negative health consequences. Now, for me, and what I've learned about insulin and like the whole cycle of putting on weight and then what that does to your body and the insulin signaling, and then it's sort of like this snowball rolling downhill. um, in my case, I can't say that the weight was not a health issue, because I couldn't stand for more than 20 minutes without pain. I To say that I was exercise averse would be a huge understatement. I had aches and pains all the time. I took Advil a lot.
Wow.
There was a moment that I realized a couple of months ago of like, oh no, I don't think I've taken any Advil in like 6 months. It's like something that you kind of forget about when it's not there.
Yeah.
So for me, it definitely, I think there was a connection to health, to physically and certainly mentally.
Yeah. So when you started the medication, you said you didn't feel a huge shift at first, but then you increased your dosage, and that's what was it? Walk us through that. What happened when you first started the medication and what changed along the way for you internally, like mentally and then physically as well.
Well, I feel like, as I'm remembering, I went through, I was made aware of the shift process through Ginger Burr, who's helped me with a lot of joyful fashion transformation personally. And and so she told me, she said, a lot of my clients have had success with Rita Black and the shift process. And I thought, oh, I was coming from it from a body peace standpoint. Like, do I really want to go down that weight loss? Do I really want to get on that train? That they call it the diet mentality. It's like, oh, I had, immersed myself for 2 years in the evils of the diet mentality in this society that wants us to conform and be in smaller bodies and be less powerful. Um, I did want, I did not want to end up with the health conditions my mother had. I was not a happy person. I was not able to self express. I live in a climate that is oppressively hot and humid in the summertime, and I couldn't be physically comfortable in my clothing because I felt so self conscious. And I was never the kind of person that just thought, hey, whatever they think, I'm going to do me. I just didn't feel that way. So I decided to give the GLP-1 a try, but I was a person who wasn't getting on a scale. And then I started the shift process. And I remember reading the prep materials about calorie counting, and I almost spun out. I remember, I think there was a questionnaire about like, what do you think your biggest challenges are going to be when you start this
Right.
program? And it was before the program, and a coach replied back, and I said, well, counting calories and the diet culture, and like I haven't been on a scale in 2 years, and I and you actually responded to that email personally, and you said, if you decide this is not for you, you don't have to do it. I thought, well, no, I don't think I'm really looking for a way out. Is there a way I can do this without counting calories? And the answer was no. And I decided to trust it.
Right. And just for our listeners who are spinning out just listening to this conversation, we don't count calories like dieters, and we are not a part of the dieting culture. But
Right. I
we
was at
do.
the beginning of the program before all of that became evident. I also had some success with a program called Always Hungry, which was a macro-based program.
Oh,
And it was
interesting.
rigorous in terms of the macro makeup of each of your meals and planning for that. And,
Hmm.
you know, there is where I felt like I heard a calorie is not a calorie is not a calorie. All calories are not the same. So
Hmm.
I had some overcoming to do when it came to the calorie business, but I decided to try it. And early on, I read something in my shift materials that just stopped me in my tracks. And what I read was every morning that I get up, I know I have a choice. I can choose to live in my body, honor it, and move it literally towards my vision. Or I can choose the path of pain. And that just really spoke to me. And there was another quote. It was basically when you're pursuing a goal, where you normally stop has a direct correlation to where you are right now. And I thought, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to try this and see what happens. And so was taking the GLP-1 really, other than being in the doctor's office, and I would get on the scale and I would tell them, don't tell me what it says. I don't want to know. But at some point, I became aware that the number was 205. And I started on the shift process and I learned so many things, so many things. But there was a calculation to figure out based on what you weigh and your activity level. It was called a daily budget for your calories. And so I had that. And having been through the Always Hungry program, I was familiar with a program called My Fitness Pal because I used it to plan my meals. So I was like, well, I have a lot of stored information in this. I'm going to give this a try. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Rita, but sometimes it's like the planets align and you're in the right place at the right time and you have the right wellspring of energy to take something on. And that was that moment for me.
Mm, yeah.
And so I started the shift process and I started allocating my calories in accordance with the budget. And it wasn't very long before I saw that those numbers were coming down. And if I would not, I see you wanting to say something.
Oh, I was just going to ask you, I know you saw the numbers coming down. Did you feel when you entered into that world of tracking? Um, and FYI, for anybody who doesn't know what MyFitnessPal is it's a tracker. So you can track, you can just, it's an app where you can just put in what you eat and it will track your macros. It will track your calories. Makes it very, very easy, not like the old calorie counting days where you had your little piece of paper and tracked calories. But I guess when you entered that world, given your initial reaction, but because we were looking at this more like a scientist, like an inner scientist, like really looking
That
at
was
it
a huge,
from,
yes, that was a huge help for me that that it was so emphasized. We are a loving scientist. The scale and that weight is a data point. the information that you're tracking is a data point. Your exercise frequency, duration, and what you do is a data point, and you have a goal. But this may or may not be the time to bring it up, but in this program, it leads you to create a vision of what you want. And that is so different an approach for me than an amorphous, I want to lose weight.
Right.
There were hypnosis and meditations that led me to create a vision of what I wanted. And I'd never really thought of it specifically before. And the meditations would ask me to form a picture in my mind of me at my goal weight. What would I be doing? What would I be wearing? And there was this garment that I had been lusting for that was not made in my size. It is a Clara Sun Wu liquid leather jacket, completely vegan, motorcycle style jacket that is beautiful cloth. It was metallic silver, shiny. It was blingy in all the right ways, and it was not available to people in my size. And I was pretty upset about that. And then was a pair of jeans made by Alambika that were platinum and black, almost looked like a swirly tie-dye. And those were not available to people of my size. And I put myself in that. And I held that as my vision. That's where I want to go. That is the person that's on the inside that can be reflected on the outside. Wow, this is almost fun. And so that's what I would focus on. So having the vision, having the science-based approach, and as I would go through the program, I would be introduced to more materials that would support the science of how to eat and how the brain works, which really helped me to feel so much less like a freak. Because I have had, sometimes still have, compulsive thoughts about food. And that is not a secret in this program. It's discussed.
Right.
The book by David Kessler, The End of Overeating, which you mentioned in some of the material, I would listen to that when I would go out on my walks, and I would hear stories about people. Like, for example, if you went to a meeting and there was a bowl of M&Ms, peanut M&Ms, almond M&Ms in the middle of the table, some people can't focus on the meeting because they're just thinking, how can they furtively get the M&Ms with nobody noticing, and how can they get more, more, more? And my brain would do that. And I came to learn through your program and through the reading that it wasn't because I was a pig. It was because my brain just worked that way, and the reward system in my brain, that's what it lit up on. And so
Yeah.
that's what it wanted, more, more, more.
That's exactly. And I think a lot of the conversations that we have and a lot of and this is why I'm interested in what your experience is, because so much of what we focus on is removing the shame and the stigma that, of struggling, because it's not us. We are not the problem. The problem is how the brain is designed, and our bodies are designed. We have genetic, if we struggle with weight, chances are we have a genetic propensity. Your mother was overweight. We have a genetic propensity for in our brain, and our taste buds and our whole body is more aligned with foods that are higher in carbohydrates, and it behaves like a drug. And David Kessler's second book, Diets, Drugs, and Dopamine, he talks about GLP-1s. He talks about how, just there's a genetic component to this. that can be managed, like which, and that we talk about in the shift, how we can learn to adjust our own eating and the way we nourish and stabilize ourselves, so that we can turn down the food noise and we can not, be in the throes of what you're talking about, which is just like always thinking about food, always
Just feel like
feeling
you're white
hungry.
knuckling through your
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
with and the internal shame that you feel. I remember, being part of a social occasion where friends would get together for dinner and drinks and potluck. Oh my gosh, all this homemade food, this treat homemade food and cakes. And I couldn't focus on the people in the event, especially if I was anywhere near the food, because I was thinking about the food and like, what is the biggest, smallest piece of cake that I can have and be socially acceptable? It was, I mean, literally, like, and if everyone turned their backs and I had a free shot at it, I would go in there and probably just scarf it down.
I
And
remember when,
let's
can I tell you my cake story? And
do
then,
it.
because you're reminding me of that social shame of wanting to eat cake. And I remember being at a wedding with my husband. This is pre-shifting, for myself, where I went up and got a piece of wedding cake, went and sat down and ate it. And then I went up and I asked for another one, and the guy kind of gave me a look and I was like, and I took it. And then I made my husband go and get me two more pieces. And then I asked my friend to get me, because
Wow.
I just didn't want the waiter or the guy,
Yeah, you
you know.
could, that scrutiny.
Yeah, that's scrutiny, but oh my gosh. Yeah, like wedding cake and birthday cake was my heroine. So I totally get it. Yeah, the cake thing. But go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I just remember that I
That's
can
okay. I'm not
totally
exactly
share your.
sure where I was
Well,
going.
it's just like we were talking about, like where our mind goes. Like, and again, it's not, and then we think of it as a personal fault, or it's our, secret little shame point that nobody else can understand and everybody else can manage themselves. But, no, there is a huge amount of people that struggle with this. And so our culture and our society make it really hard to navigate because we're
Well, they ascribe moral
surrounded.
failing to it,
Well, and
and, I was a sneak eater. I remember my sister and I, when we were kids, we would bake my mother'd be at work. We were raised
Mhm.
by a single parent, and we would make the Duncan Hines cake, which we weren't supposed to be making. I mean, we would hide it. My sister hid some in the washer. Turned out not to be a good idea. Well, and I've been partnered over the years. I'm now happily married, but if I ever feel like eating more than I think looks appropriate, then I would wait for an opportunity when I wouldn't be observed and I would sneak food.
Yeah,
And that's so heavy to carry around.
it sure is. It sure is. There's a lot of secret eating, and it just doubles the shame. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So I
as you were
noticed
shifting, oh,
with,
go ahead. I'm
yeah,
not going
with
to
the,
interrupt
the
you.
GLP-1, I do feel like some of the volume on that, go back for more, go back for more. Come on, there's more. There's
Yeah,
nuts in the pantry. Psst, 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 psst.
yeah,
There's ice cream in the freezer, more, more, more. Some of that was turned down by the drug. I was also having success with my shift program. So I was having steady progress down, and I wasn't starving myself. And kind of should have mentioned this at the very beginning. The biggest reason I started on the shift program is because I was so exercise and movement avoidant, and I knew that that was not a realistic way to be. And I knew there was no arguing with the fact that more movement equals a healthier person and a more mobile person and a more flexible and pain-free person. So I was hoping that the shift program with the meditation and the hypnosis would help me overcome that hurdle. But I was hugely in doubt because I was so entrenched and intransigent about it. And now I'm just really laughing hysterically because it's turned around. How many 100 bazillion% could it turn around?
It's
Is there
great.
there's exercise I do now that I think is fun.
I love that. Were you also, because you probably not, I would say, an early user of a GLP-1, but I think you started taking it because I think you've now been, I know, and we will talk about your being off it for a bit, but that you were on it. Uh, anyway, I guess my question is, did you want to engage in exercise also because of what you heard about maybe the muscle loss with, losing weight too quickly or with the GLP-1s, like that has been kind of a side effect for people, and that wasn't a concern for you?
That was not initially a concern because I was ignorant about it.
Okay, yeah, it became more publicly known, I think, after you had started your journey.
Well, and as you have mentioned before, in this vast array of training and subjects and learning that we do, that once you reach your goal weight, that vision of me in this Clara Sunwoo jacket and the Alambika pants, I'm there. I have 4 jackets. So now I need something new to focus on, and it's now it's kind of turning more into health, and I'm diving into postmenopausal women and muscle loss and how certain kind of training does for the body what estradiol used to do for us when we had the estradiol. So now I'm,
Mm,
now I'm kind of I can, now that I'm not as focused on the weight loss, I'm I'm dialing in the bigger picture, I think.
yeah. Well, and I think that's so interesting that you said that because I think most people, and we do have a lot of people in maintenance who've been maintaining their weight. And I think that's a big, huge transition, which is we start with that vision of looking awesome in that outfit or whatever. And because that's inspiring and it's, glamorous, it's sexy, it's all that
Sexy,
stuff.
fun.
But I think it's almost like I've come to think of it as a level of weight mastery maturity where you get to a point where you get that and and it's amazing and super fun to be able to wear that outfit. But then you go a couple levels deeper and you're like, I really just want to take care of my body. Like I want to learn as much as I can about keeping my health and my longevity. And I know I went through that. I was like, you get to that lighter weight and the thrill of the scale going down isn't there anymore. It's not feeding your dopamine. So your understanding of yourself and your perspective, and then that deeper dive into I'm at a more much it's kind of like we talked about it in one of our shift meetings. Maybe you were there, Lynn, about kind of the honeymoon ends with the all the weight release because you've gotten where you want to go. And it's kind of like, because I know you're married too, it's like you get to a certain point where the deeper relationship means more, even though the
You said that
romance,
word. I was going to say that word. Like a relationship enters the picture,
yeah.
and there were things that I couldn't get before that I now get. And I used to really be derisive about people who exercised in their little spandex outfits and all the yoga people. And I just, mocked them. But now, oh, it's like I have a relationship. I feel my body. I feel so grateful to be 67 years old and that it allows me to do what I need to do right now. And now I understand Qigong, which before I was like, what is this? This is like not doing anything. And yoga, yeah, I tried, but I mean, when I was heavier, my stomach got in the way of some of the moves. But now yoga has helped me mentally. It feels like me time. It feels like meditation, and it's making me stronger. And it's
Mm,
yet another community in my life, which is a really good, generally healthy community where much of my life I've been kind of in the rock and roll realm where it's not about health. Um, so now I have a relationship with my body, and I have found myself on occasion, maybe I drank too much and I felt my heart racing. And I actually said, "Oh, heart, I'm so sorry I did that to you. That made you like beat like that and work so hard. Now I just feel like I have a relationship and I can feel things that I wasn't able to feel before. And thank God I get to do this before I die. At the tender age of 67, I finally got here and it's precious. I don't want to let it go. And
yeah.
I'm afraid to. I've never thrown the word joy around ever, but I feel it.
Mm.
It's kind of scary. I'm like, I want to slap that person sometimes, but I
Well,
love it so much.
yeah, and it's a vulnerable place to be because it feels so young and tender in a way, you know.
And also, I've heard you say so many times that our brain tends to go toward the negative side of any thought, like it's gonna go away. You're gonna lose it.
Yeah, yeah,
If you're
yeah,
not a good girl, you're
yeah,
gonna lose it.
yeah. There is so much wiring there, old wiring that needs, I think, I've talked about maintenance before because now how long have you been maintaining for, Lynn?
Since December.
Okay. So you've been maintaining and I think that first year of maintenance is tender, because it's something and I know now it's been a few weeks that that you have stopped using GLP-1s as well, which probably and we'll talk about that in a second. But I do feel that first year is psychologically, it's again, it goes back to that idea that more mature relationship, it, you're navigating those negative thoughts that are natural that come up and say it's not going to last because they're so habitual. They're just habitual. They're just, they're wired in, right? And it's kind of like you have to collect evidence against that part and calm that part of you down. For those of you who aren't aware, we do parts work. So we talk about the inner critic and the inner rebel, and the inner critic is vigilant. And it's like, I've got to protect you and I got to tell you, don't get a big head about this because it's probably not going to last, right? So it's trying to help, not not
Yeah,
doing a great
she's
job.
employing fear tactics, you
Yeah,
know?
because that's all she's known. And so, in a way, you kind of have to go inner critic, honey, look, I just got off track last week and I got back on track. And you see, I know how to manage this. That's what we've been talking about, in our maintenance meetings is just, this idea of building building that trust with that part of ourselves. But it isn't something you can just snap your finger and it happens. It's like you actually have to build the trust, right? Like, and that takes time.
And another thing I really wasn't prepared for is identity. Who
Mm,
who is this person now? Like, do I buy into this identity?
mm,
Who is she? Does she really have it under control? Is she a person? Is she a size 6 person? Is that her really? Is that
Yeah.
fleeting?
Yeah.
Is she going to
Yeah.
go out and go crazy with cocktails and eat a bunch of pizza?
Yeah. Well, I think it's integrating also because I think you mentioned or somebody else mentioned this part of me is there's that rebel part sees this new healthier part of you as boring.
Yes. Health
And
nut.
yeah, health nut. And exactly. And it takes time to integrate all the parts of you to see that you can still be Lynn the rebel, the rock and roller, and manage your weight and have your health and
A
but it
friend of mine invited me to her home for dinner, and she literally wrote me saying, "What should I cook? I know you eat healthy." And I thought, there it is, that's how I'm perceived.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I kind of didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to, there's a retraining of the people in your life as well to make them, you know, uh yeah, to let them know they're okay and you still love them and you can still be you. And, but there is also, you have to own that you are a healthy person and that it's okay if they respect that and want to maybe, and to let them know, like, hey, you don't have to make chicken and broccoli. I can take care of myself here. Maybe I'll bring something and I bring something, like, but I do think that there's so many layers to the weight release journey. And so that's why I think, but you don't have to do them all at once. I do think that though it's so much more than, like you said, just about what goes on in the scale. It's just so much of this is mental nuance that and it can't happen all at once. I think the diet industry just focuses on like lose weight, so black and white
That's
versus
right, because then your life will suddenly be magical.
right. And fly away on the unicorn and off into the sunset. But it's you are changing from the inside out, and little bit by little bit, it doesn't happen all at once. That's why I think I would love to talk about a little bit about what made you decide, because I think our listeners would be really fascinated. What made you decide to start to come off of the GLP-1 once you had reached your ideal weight, you had maintained that weight for a few months, with the drug, and then you had now have transitioned off. So I'm sure they would love to hear that decision. What made you decide that?
Well, insurance is a thing. And
Yes.
and there's a criteria you need to meet, as far as I know, to be eligible for a prescription for what I was on, which was Mounjaro. And I'm certain that I do not no longer meet the criteria, so I need to be prepared for it not being available to me, even though it eases things. Um, and I'm also facing just a couple of personal transitions in medical practitioners, and I knew that I may run out of supply. And I began to start stretching my doses out a little bit so that I wouldn't completely have to come off cold turkey. But the more I went on, there's been one thing that's plagued me a little bit through all of this, and that is the question in the back of my mind: did I do this, or did medication do this for me?
Hmm.
So some people call that imposter syndrome. And I've felt like there's this monster, big monster lurking, the big monster of no medication. What's going to happen? And I likened myself to Wile E. Coyote, like standing in the middle of the road, looking around, thinking everything's fine. And then there's like this big Acme boulder, like looming over his head that's just going to come crashing down. And then he's going to lose everything. And so I decided I don't want to live in that fear. It's just, I know it's like in my cells now, this fear. So I want to know exactly what it is I'm going to need to deal with. And I think I'm going to stop taking this. I was on a fairly low dosage. I was on a dosage of 5, and the upper dosage, I think, is 15. A lot of people have gone up to that. I had really no side effects that I could speak of. So I just made a decision not to take that next dose. And as the days went on, I just, I really wanted to feel my baseline and
Mm-hmm.
see how how am I going to feel? How am I going to do without this support, which may not be available to me again? Now that I feel strong, energized, motivated, what am I going to be dealing with?
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming there was fear involved in that, like that
The
decision.
biggest fear, because I've lost 70 pounds. I've invested in 2 to 3 wardrobes along the way. And quite frankly, I have some feelings about all the money I've spent on the clothing. But on the other hand, I couldn't even dare to dream I'd be a size 6.
Yeah.
So, and I did need clothes to wear. So the fear is like, I know my husband will always love me. I know he's very proud of me. I know I inspire him. And he has absolutely said, no, I support this money you've spent on the clothing in your personal revolution. I support it. I mean, he's not like double it, but um, so it's the fear like, oh, all these clothes you've bought, all these people that have seen you, what are they going to think? What are you going to think? You're out of control. You really are a pig, oh,
You mean
just
like your fear of the being
my
disappointed in
fear
yourself,
of
like
like,
that?
my fear of being able to be my own inner coach and align with the long-term goal rather than the short-term satisfaction of whatever kind of going off track would look like.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically the fear of losing the myriad of things, the relationship with my body, the ability to self-express in my clothing, um, the loss of all of that, which has brought so much joy to my life. That's a huge loss.
Right.
It's a defeat and a failure.
Yeah. But on the other hand, did you feel like you were equipped and
I
ready?
have the tools.
Mm-hmm.
I might need to learn to use them in new ways because the whispering is a little louder now.
Yeah. Oh, you mean the food noise?
Yeah, the food noise is a little louder, and I think my appetite is adjusting.
Yeah.
And I am pretty pretty meticulous with measuring
Mm-hmm.
so that I can't just like psych myself out about what I actually ate. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not crazy, but I do weigh the food and try to make the best decisions I can about how much I'm eating, and it all fits within my daily caloric budget, which I've since maintenance have stepped up about 50 calories at a time. And I'm a little reluctant to go up too far because I do enjoy a cocktail every once in a while, and I do enjoy a piece of bread every once in a while, and I might have a tortilla when I go
Yeah.
out to dinner. I mean, I think there are tortillas in life. There
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. I mean, I think you are, there's twofold here. You're talking about a normal transition from releasing weight to maintaining and really being the inner scientist again and just seeing what levers you can adjust that will naturally allow you to maintain your weight. And I think that's one aspect of our program and why tracking and understanding calorie budget and all of that is so helpful and why we have so many maintainers is because people truly understand the science behind it so that they can make those adjustments and stay on track, right? But it also sounds like then you are, and because again, the whole GLP-1 and coming off of GLP-1s is a new realm for everybody, right? It's not just you. It's like this is new territory. You're a pioneer in this area. I have a few others in our community that are doing it as well. And your what you're talking about seems to be normal, is that your body needs a couple of months to adjust, that the hunger will kind of come back. And then when I think why people gain weight, what I'm hearing is because they start eating carbohydrates again and or they'll might eat one carbohydrate and that will spike their blood sugar and then they'll feel hungry but you have that training of knowing how, like you've been tuning into what you've been eating and have that ability. Like you said, you have tools, but you might need to use the tools a little differently now that the medication is not in your system anymore.
Yes, exactly. I'm still planning my meals. Um, I don't really, if on any day that isn't like going out to a restaurant or something, I basically
Mhm.
plan my meals the same way I would, during a weight loss phase. I'm retired, I'm creative. I'm not saying I like to be in the kitchen 24/7, but I'm not afraid to cook, and I've always been willing to just cook for myself. So I eat pretty well. I don't eat
That's
a whole lot of processed foods. There are some little built-in cheat foods, like there's a certain lower carb, high fiber bagel. You know, I might want something that tastes like a half a bagel with a
yeah,
homemade apple butter on it. Um, or they're the Yasso yogurt poppables, 35 calories for a little chocolate covered vanilla yogurt ball. So those are little indulgences, but I plan for them, budget for them, and it's not like, 30% of my daily calories is consumed in them either. I've learned about the
yeah.
carb ceiling, and that was a new concept for me, and now I'm mindful about that.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be interesting because just so listeners know where you are just over 4 weeks off of a GLP-1 drug. You've been maintaining your weight for the most part, right?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
if I eat the way I plan, my weight tends to go down a little bit below my goal. But I know eventually I'm going to go out to dinner with friends. And it's not, sometimes I do feel like my appetite rearing up, despite my best efforts to have protein before I go out or drink a lot of hot tea. Um, but I don't go out and eat like a plate of mashed potatoes and fried chicken or anything like that. But, I might go out and have something that involves a corn tortilla or a tamale or something like that. And I don't shoot myself or beat myself up about it. I just take it in stride because I don't go out to eat every day. And when I get back to my mostly routine way of eating, within a day or two, I'm back where I need to be. Or actually, I've never exceeded the 5 pound threshold from my goal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Well, let's just, I think I wonder if in these, because I think from what I've heard, and you and I were discussing this before we turned on record, is that it takes a couple of months for your body to sort of adjust and for that hunger to go away, like to start to dissipate.
Oh, that'll be
And
nice when it dissipates.
yeah, and I think also because you have the training and understanding trigger foods and carb sealing and all of that, I think there are a number of people out there who from what I'm, because I'm very highly, looking at all of the studies, data that are able to manage and maintain their weight. So it's not a given that it's going to be a challenge and a problem long term. Because again, I think you, from the beginning, never used the drug as like the drug is going to do it to me. You did it like I'm going to use the drug as a tool and go on this journey and really own internally, the mentally, physically, the journey of releasing weight, making the adjustments, and understanding weight release, managing yourself, creating that vision, like you said, that, and all those pieces, I think have set you up for success. It is really interesting though, because you and I were talking about like just the chemical impact, the way the body works, the genetic component, all of those things is it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be interesting to see, as you continue on your journey. I'm excited for you because I'm wondering a month in or a little more than a month in, and you are, maintaining your weight. I'm sure you, and maybe you can speak to this, do feel that vulnerability on one hand, but do you feel proud of yourself that you've maintained your weight without the drug?
Very, very, because I don't know. I just feel like I'm a different person now.
Hmm.
And I don't want that vision dispelled. And yes, I have maintained my weight, and maybe I'm a little hyper vigilant about it. But that's okay. If it
I
gets me
think
the
that's
results and it
understandable right
doesn't
now.
harm anybody else, and I can, there's more on my conversational blackboard than weight loss and macros. And, I have more to offer in the world than I'm maintaining my weight. Although, people notice.
I just think, what you might be deeming as hypervigilance, which, you could certainly call it that. I think it's being a scientist of the process that your body is going through when, like I said, you don't have a lot of data points at this point because there's just not a lot out there. You're one of, you're in, you're kind of an early adapter and an early getting off of the drug person to, really go through that and so I think that vigilance will obviously loosen over time as you prove to yourself, okay, I can do this. I know I can do that. I know that's all. I think I think people underestimate the internal journey, even maintenance. Forget maintenance without a GLP-1 drug, but just that maintenance is a head game. And it is really about proving to yourself, I can believe in myself now.
Yes, because right now I feel like I'm at a very at-risk period.
Yeah.
And because almost nothing more frightening than the unknown. And that's where I'm at right now without that drug is, sort of feeling for the lack of it and trying to put a definition on what that feels like.
Yeah, I mean, there is so much going on in internally in your neural pathways and just how you see and feel and perceive your reality. You're in a new world. And then there's so much going on physiologically that you've never experienced before. So like I
Not to
said,
mention the backdrop of the world, that we're
oh
living
yeah,
in.
the opinions of everybody and
Yeah.
and what have you. So managing all of that is huge. And you've got to, I think taking ownership takes time. Again, just for a normal, like non-GLP-1 maintenance journey, it takes, we have a huge evidence folder that we can't do it in our subconscious mind. And it takes time, like I said, and a lot of love to prove yourself wrong and to put that, okay, you can't do it over into the yes, you can do it folder that's in your subconscious mind. And like I said, I think it takes a good 6 months to a year to really feel like, okay, I've got the ground beneath my feet. And that's why I think being in a community is very helpful because you have others who, at least have maintained their weight before you who have said, yes, that's totally appropriate to where you're at right now. But I think you're an early adapter of the coming off of a GLP-1 drug, and so you're a pioneer of sorts. And I think you should also give yourself credit for that.
Yes, I'm not hanging on for dear life, even though I could go online. There are some companies that sell compounded versions of it. If I just wanted to just like, bite my fingernails and just be la 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 la, this is I really do want to feel what it feels like to not have it. And wow, the community means everything. It really does. If I can come out with my sloppy thought or my vulnerable thought, and it's probably been thought by someone in the community. And chances are I'll get some support, a statement, a strategy. I've been there. Maybe try this. That's that's so valuable to me.
Yeah. I think it's underestimated the power of a group, especially for something like this. Um, is there something you want to say? Because I have a final question for you, Lynn. I
Okay.
think this has been so helpful. So if there was someone out there that was toying with the idea of using a GLP-1 drug for weight loss, do you have any words of advice?
My words of advice would be to look upon that as a support. But I think that that person would need to be ready to adopt the changes to get them where they need to go and look at that as maybe sort of like water noodles or something, to help support them. I think a drug is not the answer unless you know for the rest of your life that's good enough for you and you're going to have access to it. Um, then in that case, if that's what you need and it's going to improve your health, I would say go for it. But I think for me, learning how to live the lifestyle that affords me the health, the body, the personal expression, the vitality, the ability to dance like a fool, that's what's going to keep me in my joy zone. I think it's a support. I don't think it's the answer. I think it's a miracle way to help you get there.
Yeah, well, fair enough. I think that's a great answer. Um, well, I so value your coming on and being vulnerable and real with us. And I think this has probably been a very helpful conversation for a lot of people. And so thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
I
It's
hope
been a
so.
joy to talk
Thank
to
you,
you.
Rita. Thank you for I hope you never get tired of hearing the accolades of gratitude that you are always innovating and addressing so many different hurdles and situations that we deal with in this journey, and you just don't stop and always there. The feeling is of great support and empathy, and I am so grateful for that.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm very grateful for you, and I'm grateful for the work we all do together. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll look forward to having you back on to talk more about your journey as somebody maintaining their ideal weight at post GLP-1. You're a great pioneer, Lynn, so we'll have you back on.
Thank you. I'll wait for that. I'll aim for that.
Yes.
Thank you, Lynn, for sharing so deeply and vulnerably, if that's a word, vulnerability, vulnerably. Oh my gosh. You know what I mean? So deeply and honestly. Thank you. I'm not going to try that word again. But that was just really very powerful because like I said, the drug is everywhere and it can be a powerful tool if you take ownership of the journey you're going on at the same time. So have an amazing week. And remember that the key, and probably the only key to unlocking the door of the weight struggle, is inside you. So keep listening and find it. And you know where you're going to find me here next week. I'll see you then. You want to dive deeper into the mindset of long-term weight release? Head on over to www.shiftweightmastery.com. That's www.shiftweightmastery.com, where you'll find numerous tools and resources to help you unlock your mind for permanent weight release, tips, strategies, and more. And be sure to check the show notes to learn more about my book, From Fat to Thin Thinking: Unlock Your Mind for Permanent Weight Loss.